Welcome to episode 7 of Apparently. I'm here with my co-host Ladan. Hey Ladan.
All right, it's me, Big Sister General.
Big Sister General. Joking, that's my Kamala Harris impression. So we took a bit of a break last week. We wanted to have a week off because we didn't really feel like there was much going on in the news apart from the genocide in Gaza, of course, which we
Yeah.
will continue to talk about. But we wanted to have a week off, but now we are back to regular programming. If you're still listening and you are a loyal, apparently listener, thank you, thank you, thank you. We've got a bit of a jam-packed episode for you today. We're going to be discussing a bunch of things, but obviously the big news over the past week or so has been the current Vice President, Kamala Harris, is now tipped to be the next Democratic nominee for the presidential election because Genocide Joe has finally stepped down. But what we're going to be discussing is whether it's a good thing that Kamala is the next in line to be the Democratic candidate. So, Ladan, over to you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit conflicted about Kamala. Obviously, she has been in government with President Joe Biden, Sleepy Joe, who has supported, funded, defended the genocide of the Palestinians in this latest bloodbath. Um, and she hasn't really been that strident in opposing some of his more extremist statements. And actually, one of the features of Kamala that I despise the most is her lack of thinking. The most disturbing thing that she's done, in my opinion, is promoting some of these, in my opinion, and not no, actually no, it's not an opinion. These false claims around sexual assault committed in October 7th. She screened that awful
Sheryl Sandberg, the Meta lady, the one who for
yes, yeah,
Facebook. So
yeah,
we did a film screening of the atrocity porn, the fake systemic rape on October the 7th propaganda, to basically continue to give new life to the manufacturing of consent for this genocide because every time there's a new mass atrocity in Gaza, like what happened in Rafah, basically what's happened throughout all of Gaza. But whenever there's something that ends up going viral, um, like the Flower Massacre and among many other massacres in Gaza, that's when the Zionists have to whip out the false claims of mass rape and systemic rape on October the 7th, because that's pretty much the only thing that they're banking on at the moment. Because as we all know, as soon as October the 7th happened, it
yeah,
wasn't actually any murder or anything like that that drummed up the most support for the genocide. One of the biggest selling points for the genocide in Gaza among the American public was actually the fake reports of mass rape by,
yeah.
barbaric Arabs against these innocent, lovely IDF female soldiers.
Yeah,
Uh,
and there's been no evidence of it, and like you said, it's a weapon in this genocide for the Israeli regime, and that was the most disappointing record for me for Kamala, where there was these ridiculous claims that Hamas had filmed rapes and cutting off breasts while raping their victims. These are like fantastical claims where there is no evidence of it. And a lot of the so-called witnesses are accused of sexual assault themselves and pedophilia. There's a charity called Zaka in Israel where a lot
a
of
sort of a, what do you call it, like a rescue organization, but
yeah,
the founder of Zaka raped hundreds of women, I believe, before he died. A lot of the claims, that's saying every accusation as a confession, they
exactly,
basically project their depravity onto Palestinian men because that's
exactly,
exactly what they do.
yeah. And we've recently been hearing some horrific and verified claims of Palestinian children, teenage boys who were sodomized with metal poles by the IDF. And there's no film screening in the White House for those victims, even though they have actually been verified. So yeah, that's the biggest stain for me on Kamala's record. But there is some light in the darkness when it comes
Well,
to.
even prior to October the 7th, she's been quite a useless sitting duck as a VP. She failed on any controls on the American border. She's basically
Yes.
let loose on that. And even we can go through that border right now and um, get through those gates. But
I
not
mean,
just
some of our
that.
family might have actually done that, to be honest.
Huh?
No, delete.
Sorry. Okay. No, but prior to that, also her record as a prosecutor. Kamala is a cop.
Mm.
She suppressed evidence that would have led to freeing a man on death row. She openly advocated for imprisoning parents whose children are truant in school. So I genuinely don't understand why liberals support her. And she's responsible for a lot of innocent Black men going to prison for a very long time for non-violent offenses. Um, Kamala has always been known as a villain when she was Attorney General. She's had quite a colorful past in that role, but apparently we're supposed to accept her as a Black woman, as an African American woman, no less, even though she is half Jamaican, half Indian. That is
Her
not
dad
African
hates her.
American.
Her
Her
dad
dad
hates
hates
her.
her.
Have you? He's so Kamala is yet another example of a neoliberal child of Marxist parents. So we have, let's see who I can recall. Lisa Nandy in the UK. Her dad was an Marxist Indian economist, and she's actually in Keir Starmer's front bench at the moment.
That's Lisa Nandy, the MP for Wigan. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and former chair of the Friends of Palestine organization in Parliament. And while she was a chair, she made sure to make sure that the whole organization kind of disappeared into the background. Basically, she stood for election just so that she can destroy the movement from within. Very dark character there. Who else do we have? We have the Miliband's, David
Yeah.
and Ed.
David and
Uh,
Ed.
their father was I believe, Polish, Jewish, Marxist economist as well.
Refugee from Belgium, I
Oh,
think.
Belgium, sorry. Yeah. Um, who else? There's quite a few disappointing neoliberal children of Marxist parents. Yeah, I can't think of any more at the moment, but
That's
there's
what happens, I guess. I guess if you also have like super religious parents, that you can end up with atheist kids. If you, yeah,
yeah, I
it's
mean,
just
another
your
one I
kids will
remembered
never
is
be a reflection of you.
exactly. I would denounce them. I just remembered also Hilary Benn, son of Tony Benn, massive
He's the
disappointment.
worst. I think he's the worst.
He is the worst. That is the worst.
Father was such a great guy when he um, was talking about Iraqi women and children in
Oh, it's a
Parliament.
wonderful speech.
Yeah,
That sometimes brings me to tears. And
yeah.
also the campaign he did in the last one of the last genocides in Gaza. I think it was Operation Cast Lead, where he fought the BBC to hear claims, the fundraising claims, because the BBC claimed that fundraising for Palestinian children and civilians was too political. And he managed to fight that on air. Wonderful man,
Great man,
disappointing
great guy.
child.
Yeah. I think his daughter Melissa's also kind of disappointing, but she's not a
The,
member of parliament, so
the entire bloodline has been destroyed,
yeah.
to use
Uh,
dramatic language. But yeah, Kamala is a massive disappointment to her father, because she also, apart from locking up marijuana users, also made a terrible joke about how her half Jamaican heritage means that she's more likely to smoke pot. And then her dad, I think, wrote a letter in a local newspaper, basically saying that's basically a racial stereotype around Jamaicans, and no one in her family smokes pot. Um, but she
Let
loves
me
to
try and
laugh.
find that letter. So
She
she
loves to
was
laugh.
shamed. So the headline is Kamala Harris shamed by Jamaican father over pot smoking joke. So he, her father, basically said, "My dear departed grandmothers, whose extraordinary legacy I described in a recent essay on this website, as well as my deceased parents, must be turning in their grave right now to see their family's name, reputation, and proud Jamaican identity being connected in any way, jokingly or not, with the fraudulent stereotype of pot smoking joy seeker and in the pursuit of identity politics." Speaking for myself and my immediate Jamaican family, we wish to categorically disassociate ourselves from this travesty. Kamala Harris's campaign had no comment. So, yeah, that is actually quite outrageous. Imagine embarrassing your whole dad's like culture and being shamed like by basically being disowned by your dad.
Yeah. I mean, who knows? He could also be a deadbeat, because I know she was raised by her mum. But it's never nice to be denounced by one of your parents. But yeah, so yeah, I'm quite conflicted around Kamala. Obviously, her history as a cop, as a prosecutor, arresting many black men, women, and some destroying families essentially. A bit dark. Also, the fact that she was part of an administration that has been giving the most support, carte blanche support to the genocidal Israeli regime. However, this is where it kind of gives me pause, is that if I was an American and I had to vote, I think I would vote for her. And I'm
Wow.
just going to remove discussions around Gaza here for a minute. But if I was voting for my interests as a woman, as a black person, maybe even as a Muslim as well, basically a vulnerable person in the US. Um, uh, when I read things like, have you heard of Project 2025?
Project 2025. Yeah, I've heard of it. It basically is like a plan
It's
to,
scary.
yeah, I don't know exactly what it's about, but it's
It's
seen
a
as
it's a
like the
scary
biggest
it's
bogeyman.
basically, yeah, but it's not a bogeyman. It's been devised by former officials in the last Trump administration. It basically will destroy public schooling and encourage people to sort of set up um Christian private schooling, basically indoctrinating the kids of the future. It's going to remove access to abortion pill medication. Even though they've already ended Roe v. Wade, they want to make sure that no woman can access abortions at any
Well,
stage.
Roe v. Wade was
I know, but it's
destroyed under Joe Biden and Kamala's administration. So
I know. However, it's because they packed the Supreme Court with arch conservatives, where there is now only three liberals out of nine.
there could
So
have been four liberals if certain people chose to retire before she died. You
yeah.
know, Ruth Kanda.
Ruth Gardner forever.
Yeah, so
Ruth Bader
Ruth,
uh, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, God bless her, but she should have quit before she kicked the bucket, honestly. It's arrogance, it's pure arrogance.
yeah, I ain't trying to hear all of that. Free Palestine. Like, I don't care. America will get the president that they deserve. And
But
again,
what about vulnerable women?
what about the vulnerable women in Gaza
But
who
can I be
are
honest?
resorting to using tent scraps as sanitary towels? And not just that, again, these the Democrats will never ever achieve any of those things, like anything to actually liberate and support working class women in America. But suddenly they have all of the magic solutions when it's election time. So again, it kind of just sounds like centrist liberal claptrap coming out of your mouth right now. I have to be honest.
Maybe, but if I was a desperate poor woman who was in potentially an abusive relationship, and I was looking at, if I need to get out of this house, if I need to escape, I don't want to be burdened with, let's say, a pregnancy that will keep me trapped for further. If I had to go into the ballot box and vote for my interests, this can sound really harsh, but I would be thinking about myself rather than those women in Gaza.
But you're not going to get your abortion even with the Democrats. You're still going to lose your rights anyways.
But my
I don't
chances
understand.
But
How
my
does
chances will be better. My chances will be better. If I was an American, I would be looking at that Supreme Court and thinking, if we get one more conservative in there, we're heading for a dictatorship. We're heading for Project 2025. We're heading for the end of Social Security. Um,
Donald
we're
Trump
heading
was already the president of the United States for 4 years? I don't recall him becoming a dictator then.
But now he'll have complete power over the judiciary. If he gets one more in there, then you can wave goodbye to democracy as you know it. I mean, I'm not an American, so I'm not advocating for anyone to vote for Kamala. But if I were an American, I would be voting for whatever would make my life slightly better. It's not going to make my life better overall, but whatever's going to make my life slightly better.
Or you could try and end the duopoly in the United States and actually try and vote for a third option, a third party candidate. Why do we always, I mean, you support third party candidates in the United Kingdom, so why don't you support the idea of that in the United States?
A very good point. It's a very good point.
We'll
I
be in
think
this situation for the rest of our lives, by the way, based on what you said. It will never ever get better. We're just going to keep talking about this every 4 years.
I think America's kind of a failed democracy. What talking about the UK here for a minute. The reason why I voted for an independent candidate in the UK was because I don't think we're in the same kind of duopoly that you see in the States, where there is a somewhat drastic difference between the economic policies of the Republicans and the Democratic Party. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party, there were some areas where Labour were more on the right on economic issues than the Conservatives. You have Suella Braverman in the House of Commons recently. Suella Braverman, you remember the former Home Secretary, extremely right wing, was asking why the Labour government haven't removed the cap on 2 children for child benefit. That's insane. This is what I'm talking about. The Labour Party and the Conservative Party aren't too different. So I feel comfortable voting for an independent because I genuinely don't think there's that much of a choice. Whereas in the States, I do think there is a choice. Maybe not on Gaza, because I think
Maybe
they're
not just
equally
on Gaza, but
terrible.
also on economic policy. Kamala will still be a president for the corporation class.
Yeah, I don't think
She
she's a
will
socialist
not
in any
do
way.
anything for working class people. The Democrats don't really have a precedent for that. You look at places like Flint, Michigan, the economic destruction of, Detroit as
Mm.
well. All of that happened under Obama. So it would be very interesting. I'm interested to see what happens if America ends up actually suddenly working for working class people, if the Democrats end up fighting for working class people if they get elected. But we don't even need to have a debate about this because Kamala's not going to win.
No,
She
she's
is going to...
not.
Why
She's
are you
not.
sad? Oh gosh.
No, she's not. But I don't want another. I don't want another Trump presidency. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Not
It
about
gives me
wanting Trump, it's about challenging the fact that we've, like, when people, so another thing that I did want to talk about is people saying things like, so we are going to go back to Gaza. Oh, Donald Trump is going to be so much worse on Gaza.
mm,
Donald Trump is going to be so much worse on this and that. And I just think, how can you get worse than everything that's happening right now? And I just wish that you understood that what's happening in Gaza does reflect on how Americans are basically also being shat on by the Democrats. If they don't give two shits about children's limbs being blown apart, then they don't care about your children starving and not having enough food to put on the table in the United States. The same applies to the UK as well. We'll get into that a bit more. But yeah, I mean, we I don't remember things being great under Obama. I don't believe things have been good for Americans under Joe Biden.
No. No, and yeah, I'm definitely not looking at Kamala as a positive change. I think it's more of the same. I think just like Obama bringing in the Muslim ban without calling it the Muslim ban brought you know, a lot of harm to people like us, and then Trump just gave it bad PR. Um, Having said that, I just don't want things to get worse. I don't want things to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's just depressing.
I
Everything is
know it is
depressing.
depressing. It's a poor choice. Also, the reason why I have a little bit of a
Because you
soft
think
spot.
she's funny.
Yes,
She's
I
the
do.
laughing cow.
I love it. Do you know whenever I'm feeling low, I put on that any clip of Kamala Harris. I look at the coconut tree clip where she tells a very I think, to be honest, it's a very profound story. If you ever get a chance to watch it. It talks about how no man is an island essentially, but now it's, hashtag Project Coconut. That's what they're calling her campaign on the
Well,
TikTok.
also the whole Kamala turning into a meme. I think one of the most nauseating things that I saw was the singer from the UK, half white, half Indian singer, Charlie XCX,
Oh yeah.
tweeting Kamala is Brat because Charlie's album is called Brat and Brat's become kind of a meme. That was just disgusting.
I
It
know.
says a lot about anyone who's half Indian. Sorry, I'm always side-eyeing you guys.
Yeah, it's a meme-ification of politics, and I think I don't understand this strategy, by the way, of focusing her whole re-election campaign on Gen Z. I know they're a big portion, but how many Gen Zs can we bring to the ballot box to actually make a difference? A lot of the people that she probably needs to target is the middle-aged white women, although she has done a good job of that recently. She recently broke a record. So as you might know, middle-aged white women is a key demographic in US elections. So in 2016, I think Donald Trump won 52% of white women, which helped him win. And that was the biggest shock. I remember the next day when we were looking at all the stats and thinking, wow, white women vote for that. The groper, the sexual harasser, the guy who constantly debases women. But apparently they did.
Well,
Um,
apparently they did because you have to understand just how bad Hillary Clinton was to make them vote for a man who said he grabs women by the pussy. The white liberal class propped up Hillary Clinton. It was, and also African American women too, to some actually to a higher extent, did
do
as
you
well.
think
But
do you
mhm.
think do you think Kamala is more palatable than Hillary Clinton was?
Kamala is more palatable to, I would say, most women voters, I'd say, than Hillary Clinton, because Hillary Clinton, and I'm going to use this word, was a disgusting cunt.
Yeah.
She was
Yeah,
an
yeah, yeah.
evil, evil, wretched witch of a person. And the fact
She
that
was,
she took so much glee in destroying Libya,
yeah,
smiling and smirking as she's told that Muammar Gaddafi was
raped to death.
raped to death, which is interesting because she's also been peddling the October the 7th rape myths.
Yeah. And by the
Um,
way, we're not saying that Muammar's
no, Gaddafi was
Gaddafi
a
is.
shit stirrer, and he wasn't. We're not. I'm sure that also Gaddafi probably raped women too,
Oh, he did.
but there's no such again. Uh,
Libya is a
doesn't
mess because of Hillary Clinton. She
yes,
turned a
the
independent
most
country,
prosperous, the
one
most
of,
prosperous country in Africa.
yeah, into now I think it's divided into three warlord run
It's a slave
regions.
market.
It's a slave market. And it has no hope of being reconstructed because they had no plan of ever reconstructing it.
Yeah, and
And
yeah,
I
but
blame
she
I blame
just
Hillary.
I blame Hillary and also all the shit stirring that she did in Syria,
Yeah.
escalating the situation there.
With
She
no
was
plan. There's no
with no
plan. Like,
plan. She was the drone queen. She was evil, and she still is. And also the fact that similar to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, sometimes know to step back and let somebody else take over, because I don't think Bernie, as much as I do not like Bernie Sanders anymore, Bernie Sanders would have beat Donald Trump in 2016. He definitely
Yeah.
would have. But again, the whole "this girl can" hashtag, "this girl can," "this girl
Yeah.
will." I'll never forget when Hillary Clinton, what did she post on her
It was
birthday?
my favorite. Whenever it's her birthday, I look back at that tweet. So it was her birthday, and she posted a picture of herself as like a 10-year-old girl. She said, "This little girl will be the future president of the United States." And she
No,
wasn't.
she
Womp
wasn't.
womp.
So I blame her for that defeat as well as anyone else. But yeah, so Hillary Clinton, a lot of it is to just do with her having also a wretched, unlikable
Yeah.
personality. A lot of people don't forget the fact that, she did call Black men super
Super
predators.
predators. Yeah.
Yeah, her husband was the one who passed the crime bill, which obviously ruined and destroyed the lives of so many Black Americans.
Yeah. And I think there's another rumor, not rumor, there's another myth, sorry, not a rumor, not a myth, another claim being made about Kamala's predilection to laughing. You know how she laughs quite a lot and sometimes about nonsensical things. Um, the reason for that might be because she wants to avoid negative tropes around Black women being aggressive, and she wants to disarm herself almost to make herself more palatable to white women.
That
I don't
sounds
think
like absolute claptrap. I'm sorry, but I don't. It's like you're attributing something to her, which I'm sure she would laugh at, ironically.
no, but can
Um,
you imagine her being imagine her being more like Condoleezza Rice? I don't think Condoleezza Rice could ever stand for president because she, I think, fulfills a lot of those racist stereotypes around Black women
no,
being
I'm
stern.
sure Condoleezza Rice was seen as a heroine by a lot of right-wing people. Like,
Mm,
the people actually do hold her up as a great example of, not that I agree, but of what African American women should be like. Like, I often hear that a lot, like from
mm.
Candace Owens types. So no, I'm not gonna infantilize and do, the small bean. I'm just a neurodivergent minor sort of thing on Kamala Harris. She laughs because she has nothing of substance to say.
Yeah,
She
I,
is
I,
an
I,
empty
I agree.
vessel of a woman, and she just seems like an idiot.
But in her defense,
A
quite
very
recently,
accomplished idiot, but she's an idiot.
yeah, quite recently, Benjamin Netanyahu, Israel's prime minister, visited the Congress,
Yeah, he gave
gave
an
a speech,
address.
and got a standing ovation. Shamefully, I think Rashida Tlaib was the only person who uh, acted in protest and obviously had signs up saying war criminal, etc. But I did find it quite a relief that Kamala spoke about the suffering in Gaza. I mean, let's play a clip of her statement.
And as I just told Prime Minister Netanyahu, it is time to get this deal done. So to everyone who has been calling for a ceasefire, and to everyone who yearns for peace, I see you and I hear you. What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
I mean, obviously she didn't use the word genocide.
We
Um,
get that. Okay, so I know what you're about to say. You're going to praise her for speaking about Palestinians and humanizing them and things
yes,
like
that's
that.
exactly what I was
However,
going to say.
everything she said technically was accurate about the human devastation and the fact that people have been displaced 3 or 4 times, and the fact that there needs to be a ceasefire. But what she fails to mention is that it is her party. It is her. She's the one. They are the ones who've basically funded all of that stuff. That is the main thing. It's not even about calling it a genocide, but no mention of, conditioning aid to Israel or anything like that. Um, it's just like, I don't know how to describe it. Imagine if I
It's
killed your whole family and said like, it's devastating what's happened.
and not speaking out about who did the killing. I agree. I agree. But I don't know what it is. 9 months into this genocide, I'm looking for any crumb, because at the start of this, there was no mention of the suffering of the Palestinians. It was the hostages, and then let's try and make things easier for anyone else. And now, finally, we're getting a little bit of recognition that these people have been laid siege to for 9 months, and they've been moving from pillar to post, like you said, 3 or 4 times. So yeah, maybe I'm looking for a light at the end of the tunnel, and I'm probably deluding myself. I don't think she's going to be that much better for Gaza, but
Well, we can't
something.
forget that it was the poet who was killed in November 2023, Rafat Al-Arir. His last tweet was saying Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are responsible for the killing of my people. If I get killed, it's because of them. So let's just end on that note when it comes to Kamala and the genocide. But
What's
what
been
happened?
happening in the UK?
Well,
What
there's
we've
quite a
had
few
quite
things.
quite a lot, actually.
We've had the Labour Party. So they won in a landslide election. Well, they won most of the seat share, but not
Yeah.
the vote share. But they obviously, this is the most successful they've been in 14 years, and they're now in charge. That's a fact. We can't deny it. I need to stop coping and seething, but they've been in charge, and yeah, it's strange. I guess it's because of everything that's been going on in the world, but I don't feel, there have been lots of centrists who have been tweeting, it's nice, isn't it? The quiet and things like that. I don't feel that way. Um,
I
Keir
don't either.
Starmer is a dictator of the Labour Party, him
Yes.
and the National Executive Committee, the NEC. Um,
Yeah.
I can never,
And the
forgive,
whips.
yeah, for how he's behaved over the past 4 years. But yeah, so in Labour Party news, do you want to talk about the two
Yeah.
child cap? Explain
Yes.
actually, what is
Yes.
the two child benefit cap?
This, so speaking um of Keir Starmer's genocidal ways, um he's recently suspended 7 Labour MPs who voted to remove the two-child benefit cap. Now, this is a policy that was brought in by the Conservatives in 2017, which means that any children that you have above 2 will not receive those benefits. They were whipped into shape. The entire Labour Party, apart from these 7, voted for it. And I'm really disappointed in a few key politicians. Diane Abbott, our Queen, didn't show up.
Diane Abbott didn't show up due to health reasons.
Okay.
So she had a valid reason. I think the most disappointing one, who I believe voted against or abstained, is Dawn Butler. She is the definition of all talk, no trousers. That woman is completely and utterly useless. And
Yeah.
I've never seen anyone who just looks like, I'm just happy to have a job. Like
All
you're
of them are.
all of
All
them
of
are.
them are.
But at the same time, she's very performative. So I do not feel any sense of affinity towards her. So
Yeah, I
the
won't
Labour
defend her.
Party, yeah, they're just a mess. But
It's really depressing because, like I said earlier, Suella Braverman was advocating for removing it. Now, the two-child benefit cap, if we remove that, 250,000 children in the UK will be lifted out of poverty. 250,000 children in this country are living in poverty because of this cap. And I say only, removing it would cost about 1.3 billion pounds. Correct me if I'm wrong, our funding to the Ukraine in the most recent
the
commitment was over
Ukraine
3
proxy was
billion.
3 billion. So they've got money for Ukraine, but they don't have money to feed British children who are starving and are learning in school on empty stomachs. And don't have much to go back home to either. So it's
Yeah.
just it's an absolute disgrace. I don't understand why we don't speak up about it more. The fact that Zelensky just comes to the UK with his begging bowl every now and then. He comes to the US
In
with
his
his begging
pathetic
bowl,
little t-shirt.
wearing his army fatigues. And just, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it just creates so much more resentment, but it doesn't. I feel it doesn't create resentment. I feel like it doesn't create that much resentment a lot in the UK. I feel like it's created more resentment, the whole Ukraine funding in America, which I'm really impressed
Yes.
with. The fact that more people in America just saying, why is my money going to Zelensky? But I feel like you still can't really say that in the UK because we are just a bootlicking country. We do
I think
always
we've
say
been
that
conditioned.
we've been conditioned, but also like in the US, I would say Americans are the most propagandized people, but in the UK, we are the most neutered people. There's something about us, and we tend to mischaracterize it as like British politeness, but I just see it as British cuck behavior. It's embarrassing the fact that I always make a distinction between the whole idea of, you know, people in the UK who are Britain first and people in America who are America first. As obviously America First people, you know, led by the Nick Fuentes types. He's obviously a white supremacist, but at least there is more consistency among America First people when it comes to not funding foreign wars or foreign genocides. They have this genuine sense of pride in their country and a much higher self-esteem as a people. Americans tend to have much more higher self-esteem than British people. Whereas in the UK, our equivalent of America First is Britain First, which is basically toothless, degenerate, ugly, stinky, piss-stained alcoholics who just hate Muslims and Black people in London, and they talk about the mayor of London all the time, even though they do not fucking vote or live in London.
They wish they
They
lived in
left
London.
London decades ago because of white flight. Not because they were forced out, but because they just found it, you know, so disgusting having to live next door to an Asian person. But only like, you know, the British far right protests where you see more Israeli flags than Union Jacks nowadays.
Interestingly enough, EDL, I'm ashamed to have
Didn't they
watched.
change it, like their
No,
name?
their name, if you go on Company's House, so I only found this out through following another racist person on social media.
Jada
But she,
Franson.
yes, I'm
I,
embarrassed.
I don't give a shit. I think she's absolutely fabulous when it comes to this. But yeah, we'll
But
talk
she is
about
still a
her another
racist.
time.
Yeah. But anyway, she revealed that they changed their name on Company's House, where previously, when it was first incorporated, EDL were called the English Defence League. And then like a couple of years later, they changed it to the English and Israel Defence League.
No, I think it's English and Jewish Defense League, but the whole
Okay.
idea of JDL, they're not defending your average Jewish person in Stamford Hill. They're defending Israel. They conflate
Yes, it's
Israel with
basically
Jewish people.
they've hijacked the term Jewish to mean Israeli,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's why you see so many Israeli flags on a so-called English Defence League march. But yeah, I also want to say another thing about that. While we're complaining about British people, another reason why another distinction I see between the US and the UK is I think people in the UK hate the poor. They
But
truly despise the poor
they
because
truly despise the poor. But do you not realize that because obviously America doesn't have as well, the UK is not a welfare state anymore. It hasn't been for a very long time. But welfare, there were, you know, scaremongering documentaries a lot of the time. If you grew up in the UK in early 2000s, you would have seen lots of, you know, our version of welfare queens were overweight white women with lots
yeah.
of children. However, it's classism, but also I think it's morphed into something else where the reason why they're anti, you know, any welfare programs is because they're worried that people like us with brown and black skin and headscarves and Muslim names are going to also benefit from that, even though we are not the majority beneficiaries of that. It will just based on population alone, it wouldn't. But
Yeah.
it's just the fact that they wouldn't want us to get our mitts on it.
Yeah, even
Yeah.
though even though obviously the majority of people who claim benefits are people who work,
Yeah.
people who would like to be the middle class, as aspirational. But yeah, I was looking into why Labour haven't scrapped this cap, and the latest polling said that 60% of people in the UK think that the two-child cap should remain because they think that if you have more than 2 kids and you still rely on benefits and you're feckless and whatless and you're just having kids to make money, when we know that benefits don't really pay much. But yeah, it's depressing. It doesn't give me much hope.
Isn't that funny though? The whole idea of, when they say the reason why we should keep the two-child benefit cap is because you shouldn't have more than 2 kids. But again, especially if you are in favor of migration controls, you should want more people to be able to have more kids, especially the fact that, us people of color and Muslims as well, we can have more kids even in poverty because we know how to manage a household on a tight budget. Whereas white British people really struggle with that. And I just think you are going to, not that I have a problem with that, I would love to see more of us around, but I do find it funny because it does mean, the whole idea of an aging population, not enough, whatever you want to call it, white British people having children because
The
system does
replacement
not support
theory.
them. No, but it's funny, but it's like you can't be against, the replacement theory thing, the idea of replacement, whilst also restricting the possibility of more white people having children. So it just makes me laugh because we are going to be okay. We are survivors. Our families, our mothers in particular, knew how to run a big household on a tight welfare budget. So it's not us, and also we live in multi-generational households and things like that. And the fact that we struggle less when it comes to childcare because there's family in the house who look after the babies. So I just think, do not be surprised if you're a white person listening to this and you do, feel like if you have concerns, you kind of, if you haven't fought against this two-child policy cap, you are also to blame because you are a neutered, literally, idiot who, I don't know, doesn't, it's just,
it's insane. And if this was happening in the US, Donald Trump will probably be against this because he would be saying, how are the government telling you how many kids you should have? I think most Republicans would campaign against this.
Campaign against what, to be precise?
The keeping the two-child cap. Even though I know they don't like welfare.
Yeah.
But they like the idea of people being able to have more kids.
Exactly. And
we have a neoliberal government who aren't really socially conservative in any meaningful way. They don't want families. They just want an underclass.
They want an underclass, but it's just that they also don't want fat people to build their own families. They just want an individualistic class where we all live in cubicle flats by ourselves with our television, with our mobile phone. And it's funny that they want to parent us and be paternalistic with us when it comes to our rights and freedom of speech. But you're not going to be paternalistic when it comes to giving us money.
And the ability to stand on our own 2 feet and look after our kids. Listen,
look at the salaries in the UK. Look at the salaries in the UK. So even if you are, they're scrapping welfare, but then also the most prestigious career in the world is being a doctor. And yet there's no incentives to even have the best job in the country because you're being underpaid. So it just does not add up. I do not understand this country. And again, it goes back to the fact that as a nation, we have such a low self-esteem. We truly hate ourselves in the UK.
And we don't think that things can get better and shouldn't get better. I mean, remember the way...
not get better.
Exactly. That's how they treated the Corbyn manifesto in 2019, which would have made our country great. But they looked at that and said, this is not going to happen. This is too good to be true. Therefore, I must fight it. I think there's a lot of people that were saying it's too idealistic,
pie in the sky, and we're fully costed. But they were like, would you nationalize sausages? That you had journalists, I use that term very loosely, asking Corbyn those types, not Corbyn, Angela Rayner, those types of questions. So it's an absolute shit show. But let's talk about David Lammy. That I don't have any words to describe him. I just want him to disappear. But so David Lammy, the new foreign secretary, he finally got his dream job. At the beginning of this genocide, when he was being asked questions about a ceasefire, he scoffed and said to the journalist, look, I'm trying to be the foreign secretary. Like, he was prioritizing his career over the lives of innocent people. He peddled the myth of, even worse than the fake 40 beheaded babies, but saying that babies were raped in Gaza. Absolutely sick in the head. He is just evil. He's bad for the people in Tottenham. The Green Party have had the most success that they've ever had in Tottenham, in his constituency, even though they didn't win. The fact that they came, that they had such a high vote share, shows that David doesn't have much time left. I don't think. I hope the next election the people of Tottenham kick him out. But yeah, what do you make of him now, in his first few weeks as foreign secretary? I feel like there's a lot of mixed messages coming out when it comes to Gaza. One day we're hearing things about them dropping their challenge to the ICC arrest warrant for Netanyahu, and then changing their mind on it. Then there's also things about selling weapons to Israel. I'm getting mixed messages. I'm not seeing too many confirmations. So what's your sort of take on that, Ladan?
Yeah, I mean, there was in terms of the not just David Lammy, in terms of the entire new government when it comes to Gaza, it's very tepid. I would say it's tepid changes. So one of the beautiful things that happened when Keir Starmer formed his new government was his unceremonious dumping of Emily Thornberry. She thought she had a job. She thought she was going to be the Attorney General of the UK. Because she was in the shadow government in that capacity. Instead, he hired Attorney General Richard Hermer, Casey, not QC anymore. He's a Jewish lawyer, and it's very important to mention that he's Jewish because he was signing an open letter which called for Israel to respect international law in Gaza, which, if he hadn't been Jewish, would have probably led to claims of his anti-Semitism. But anyway, so he's been hired as the Attorney General of for the UK. And in other positive news, I think somewhat positive, the UK has withdrawn objections to Netanyahu's arrest warrant. So previously, Rishi Sunak's government, if Netanyahu was to visit the UK, they wouldn't have arrested him. Whereas now, if he were to, he would be arrested, which is good. I don't think he will be visiting us anytime soon. And similarly, I think Germany, which is another massive supporter of the genocidal Israeli regime, but at the same time, they're massive proponents of international law, given their history. And they've also said that they would abide by the ICC's ruling and would have him arrested. So that's slightly positive. Having said that, this is very tepid, in my opinion. He was never
minimum, because I don't know if there's ever been a precedent set for countries challenging the ICC in this nature. Normally, countries and states, they respect the ICC's decisions. So it looked so obvious, the falseness of the international rules-based order, that suddenly all the rules no longer apply when it comes to Israel. So I wouldn't say it's a relief. It's just, I feel like they're covering their backs a little bit, because they know that if Israel is guilty, they are obviously, but if they're found guilty or whatnot, it means that the countries that sell them arms are also guilty. So the blood is also on their hands. So yeah, I mean, I would say it's bare minimum, but at the same time, I'm looking at it and going, at least he's not doing the obvious thing that I thought he would do, where he would just be like, listen, I'm the foreign secretary. Yeah, or do nothing, or just openly continue to support Israel and keep peddling lies about Palestine. So yeah, that's semi a relief, but I don't feel that much hope. But I did see that the Board of Deputies of British Jews wrote another letter. They love their letters condemning anything. You'd think that they weren't representing British Jews at this point, and that they were representing Israel.
I'm thoroughly disturbed whenever I see that screenshot being shared on X of another letter where what have they written letters about? I think there was one where there was Palestinian artists being displayed in a children's hospital, and they wrote a letter
Children's
about that.
artwork, by the way. So children's artwork from Gaza being displayed in a children's hospital, which is very, apt. It's very appropriate. The
And they
Board of
wrote a letter
Deputies
about it.
and the hospital, I think it was like Kensington and Chelsea or Fulham, one of those hospitals.
Yeah.
And they took the artwork down. And I just think, how ghoulish and how evil do you have to be as an organization? And I think it is an insult to British Jews for them to have for them to be seen as the organization that allegedly, apparently represents them. If, let's say, for instance, there was Yazidi artwork of Yazidi children displayed in Great Ormond Street Hospital, personally, I would love to see that. I Yazidi children, bless them, may God protect them. And if I saw those images and then the Muslim Council of Britain said these are Islamophobic because ISIS tortured and harassed and persecuted them, that to me, I would see that as more Islamophobic. The idea of that of the Muslim Council, but I'd be like, what the heck do you think we are as monsters? So
and also as a British Muslim, similar. I think British Jews should look at the IDF in the way that I look at ISIS, which is an absolute horror. These are people that recently set a dog onto a disabled, I think the young man had Down syndrome. He lived with Down syndrome and autism, and they set a dog on him and allowed him to be mauled to death, and he died screaming and calling the dog Habibi, which means beloved. He thought that he was playing with him. I think an organization like that should be looked at with abject horror. You shouldn't be writing letters defending them.
I would like to see more British Jews speaking out against the Board of Deputies, because I don't know how you can let a group like that represent you. And even if you took ISIS out of the equation, let's just say a country where we have no connection to, Azerbaijan. They have committed ethnic cleansing campaigns against innocent Armenians. They've stolen their land. They've driven them out. The pictures coming out of Armenia in 2022, very, it looks very similar to what we're seeing in Gaza. Now, I don't know what type of Islam Azerbaijan practice. I hear that they're not very practicing, but do you think that we would ever see it as Islamophobic, that people have the opinions on the Azeri army? I don't give two fucks about them. So why do you, as someone who lives in London, defending like the IDF as if it's an insult to your own family? Like, I just find that bizarre. I have no connection to, like I said, even if it's not ISIS, a global terrorist group, other armies in other countries, even if they do come from a majority Muslim country, I will never defend them if they commit atrocities.
I will never defend. I don't defend Saudi Arabia as they bomb Yemen. Although Yemen is also Muslim, obviously the people that they're bombing are a different kind of Muslim to what we are. But I still don't defend that.
It makes absolutely no sense to me. But we've been cajoled, emotionally blackmailed,
bamboozled.
And bamboozled into thinking that, into almost self-censoring to some extent. So yeah, message to the Board of Deputies: please, please, please walk into traffic, all of you fucking freaks, all of them, just disgusting people,
bloodthirsty freaks of nature.
I don't know how many more babies need to die until leadership at the Board of Deputies are finally happy, until
they are extremists. They are extremists. I think I look to them in the same way I look at people like Melanie Phillips, who is a notorious, I would say, Jewish supremacist. I think a lot of people call her a white supremacist, but her connection to white supremacy and her Islamophobia comes from a place of Jewish supremacy.
The whole Judeo-Christian nonsense. Yeah, it definitely, and I'm really glad that you mentioned that. I feel like it's such a cop-out to describe acts of Jewish supremacy as white supremacy. I would almost, as a white person, be offended by that. I would say, excuse me, like, because look at all the white people who are protesting against this genocide in Gaza. Can you imagine you being associated with that. And not just that, white people are not the main beneficiaries of the Israeli apartheid project. So no,
Yeah.
absolutely not.
She
There's
was
plenty of things that you can blame white people for, not that.
yeah. So the reason why I call her Jewish supremacist, and I know it's a bit inflammatory, is because she courts Islamophobes. She was one of the people named in Anders Breivik's manifesto, the guy who killed hundreds of young people in
About
Norway.
72 people he killed in
Yeah,
Norway. Yeah.
he was a white supremacist. So a lot of people call Melanie Phillips a white supremacist, but I don't think she's a regular white supremacist. She beats down on Muslims primarily, and defends Israel's actions in Gaza, whatever they do, supports the genocide openly. And that's not to uphold white supremacist ideals. I don't think she really cares about that. I think she wants to maintain Jewish supremacy in that region.
Yeah,
Um,
from the river to the sea. That's what their
yeah,
thing is. So
like in a liquid manifesto. I don't think she's a white supremacist. I think she's a Jewish supremacist, and
yeah.
that's scary. And I hate to say that because I don't think a lot of Jews would like to put those two together. But
But it's
unfortunately,
that's what's happened. You need to call it by its name.
And just like we need to call out the extremists in our community when they're utilizing our faith to brutalize, Jewish people need to do the same.
we've been doing that. That's the funny thing. It's like it's time for others to take that
Yeah.
turn and to take
We
that
can
step.
give workshops on it.
We can give workshops on apologizing and writing fatwas condemning things.
We can do the
Um,
hug a Muslim, but then you can call it hug a Jewish person, like just like
exactly.
what we were doing post 9/11 to make people understand that we are not all the same.
But yeah,
But I stand
no.
by it.
But the funny thing is, it's like we say this as tongue in cheek because we didn't want to do that as Muslims, so we don't want you guys
No.
to do that.
Yeah.
However, I did see more condemnation from Muslims about terrorism from Muslim fundamentalists than I am seeing on the other side. So a little consistency and a little parity would go a long way in building community relations. So I
I mean,
think
having said that, I do love to see the Jewish bloc growing each week when we go to these big demos in London. I think the media class do a really good job of speaking for British Jews. I mean, obviously, the British Board of Deputy Jews do speak for a lot of British Jews, unfortunately. But I think a lot of the times, there's a lot of people who like to talk for Jews and
a lot of
cast
non-Jewish people, though. That's the
exactly.
funny thing. What do you call them? Philo-Semites or
Yeah,
philo-Semites?
Philo-Semites. Yeah, I think they
Basically,
do.
they are freaks, philo-Semites or philo-Semites, whatever you want to call it. They are non-Jewish people who fetishize Jewish people only in the context of Israel and Zionism. So if Israel and Zionism didn't exist, they would most likely just be your run-of-the-mill anti-Semites. So
Yeah.
they only like the brutish force element of international Jewry with regards to how it brutalizes Palestinians. They do not actually like Jewish people.
Nah,
They only
nah.
like the depravity that we're seeing on our screens, because you see a lot of them at these protests, non-Jewish people using terms like capo and Juden. They call also the word Judenrat to
Yeah.
describe Jewish
Jewish
people.
rats.
Yeah,
That's what it means,
exactly. Yeah,
right?
that's what it means in German, I think. To describe Jewish religious Orthodox anti-Zionists that we see at the marches all the time. And it just boggles the mind, because let's flip the switch a little bit. Candace Owens is an African American woman. She has said a lot of reprehensible things with regards to the Black community in America. She has said things that you can describe as very self-hatey, whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't think African Americans would ever tolerate a white person calling Candace Owens a coon or the
Oh
N-word.
yes. I would not.
Exactly.
I
would
can't
not. I
stand.
would not. I would draw the line at that and say, absolutely not. That is not your place to ever say that, and nor would I even say that. But they know where to draw the line and say, this is our problem. We can talk about her. However, I see a lot of Jewish supporters of Israel suddenly being okay with their non-Jewish friends calling other Jewish people anti-Semitic slurs like capo and Judenrat. And I think,
Or
why would you?
self-hating Jews.
Or
Like,
self-hating Jew.
who are you to tell me whether or not I hate myself?
It's just ridiculous. That I will never ever be able to get my head around. But I guess I think I'm kind of done. I've ranted. I'm all ranted out. I think that's all I've got time for today.
I would like to close on one of my favorite Kamala moments, just for a little bit of brevity.
I love Venn diagrams. I really do. I love Venn diagrams. It's just something about those three circles and the analysis about where there is the intersection, right? Yeah, I see people that you agree with me, right? So, okay, so I asked my team, I brought props.
On that note, we shall see you very soon.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And we'll hope to make another episode next week. Thank you for tuning into Apparently. See you again. Ta-ra.